Hi everyone, welcome to another Hattons Model Railway Skillscast session, where I show you some of the skills you can use to transform your layout into a fully working model railway. Today, we're taking a look at building a modern diesel depot in double O gauge. I'll be showing you some of the history behind the depots, what different styles there are out there, and the many different models that we have available right now that can help you make a shed large or small. So if you've got any questions regarding building depots and sheds, please do ask them in the chat and I'll be answering as many as I can throughout the stream. Otherwise, I'll give you a run through of everything that I have here in front of me. So with the dieselisation of the British railway system coming in from the 1950s onwards, as I'm sure you can imagine, there are a lot of different styles of sheds out there. And I'll be covering some of the main ones today. But as always, do a little bit of research and have a look at what type and what setting is best suited to you. I've got a little diorama in front of me here, which I've set up with some of the items that I would recommend putting on pretty much every shed scene that you can imagine, but I'll be talking about some of the others too. So to start off with, the main terminology we're looking at is the MPD, as it was originally known, the Motive Power Depot. That is a term that was brought over from the steam era days, and it then transitioned into traction maintenance depot, which is exactly what it says on the tin. It's somewhere where you would apply maintenance and do some of the lighter repairs to locomotives in your fleet. So there was quite a few of these dotted around the country, mainly where diesel and electric locomotives were required to be stabled and worked on and repaired to keep them running. So some of the larger ones out there include Toton in the Midlands, and you've got various others there too. Crew Diesel was another one, and there's various different others dotted around the country. So these were mainly larger sort of facilities, but you did get some smaller ones too. I'll just pull up an image. This is Bristol Bath Road in the 1980s. So this is a typical larger diesel depot from the BR diesel era. So you'll notice a couple of changes. If you've watched our steam era video, you'll see a couple of changes from that. First of all, it's a lot cleaner. With diesels not creating quite as much mess as steam, you'll see that the ballast is cleaner and the general depot buildings are cleaner too. You'll also spot a lot more lighting there, a lot more yard lights and safety lights on the side of the sheds, a lot more signage, again, safety signage around there with the health and safety rules coming in, including the yellow chevrons on the doors. But otherwise, you've actually got quite a few callbacks to the British Rail steam era. You've got an earlier looking engine shed of a brick-built design from the 1950s. And in the early days, a lot of these steam sheds were rebuilt into diesel sheds with a small change of the facilities included there. Some of those actually are still around today. So you can use an old style building if you wanted for your modern diesel locomotive shed. But in 2020, they are getting a little bit further and further between. So if you really want to recreate one of those, have a look at that BR diesel era from the 70s and 80s. So on my diorama here, I have the modern equivalent. A lot more sheds, especially single road sheds, had started to appear like this from the 1970s onwards. Prefabricated units in many cases with the steel sheeting down the side, as you can see here. These were mainly used to carry out light repairs on the locomotives at these depots. As you'll see in the image there of Bristol, a lot more locomotives were now stabled outside, as they didn't need to light them up in the mornings. You could just get in them and switch them on. So we see here, this is Old Oak Common in the 1970s. This is a former steam depot that had been transformed into a diesel depot, still using the locomotive turntable from the Great Western days, but these locomotives were stabled outside until they were used. So a lot less shed space for the locomotives, and with the majority of them being stored outside until their later duties. So we've got the prefab shed here. We've got lots of different designs of those. You can either buy the pre-made resin ones, such as this from Scenecraft that you see here, but we also offer a lot of different kits. We offer the double track engine shed kit from Pico, and of course a similar shed there from Gauge Master 2. And these can be built up to be anything from the 1970s right up to the current day. They're great to build either at the size you see them here, or you can expand them with further units too. And there's not really any two the same with the kits, and that really matches the depots in real life, that they look similar, but just not quite the same in how they are constructed. So A lot of the sheds are the double track type or the single track type. As we mentioned before, shed space can be at a premium at the smaller depots, but on some of the larger depots, you can buy the larger 4-track sheds too. So then we're moving along. I have put a little brick built building in there. As we mentioned, a lot of the depots were changed over from the steam era equivalents, and some of the older buildings did survive in minor roles, including crew rooms and crew mess room facilities too. So if you look at some of those depots out there, you will see occasionally the older buildings just creeping in. But if you want one of the classic designs from the Victorian or Edwardian era, you can squeeze in one of those too. Again, these are available from a variety of different sources. This here is from the Harbour and Hamlet range, but do take a look at that link in the description for more information. So we have some of the facilities now sorted. We have the area where our locomotives can receive a little maintenance. We've got a siding or two on the outside that's completely uncovered for locomotive stabling when they're not in use. How do we get some fuel into them? We need to make sure that they are ready to go and ready to be serviced. There is a lot of different variations of the fueling points and the fueling tanks, as you see here. You can buy the plastic kits again, or in the Scenecraft range, you can pick up the fueling point that you see here. So this would be connected to a set of tanks, and then you can see the actual fuel pump there. It's very similar, but on a lot larger scale than your standard petrol pump you'd see when you are fueling your car. It's the same principle of putting fuel into a locomotive there, and the locomotive would draw up to this and then be fueled. I think I've got a photo. I think this might be at a diesel fueling depot. Yep, you can just see the fueling tanks to the side of the second class 20 there. This is at Buxton TMD in the Midlands in the 1980s. So a medium-sized depot wouldn't have that huge facility for refueling its locomotives. This will be used for the light maintenance and refueling of locos that are working in the Buxton and Derbyshire area. So you don't need a huge amount of space to recreate a depot such as this. An example I've got is Shrewsbury Coleham Depot, as you can see here. This purely has a sole stabling road on the left, which has a track maintenance unit in it. And over on the right, we have our light maintenance shed with the Class 37 locomotive in front of that. So a really small shed there of a very modern prefabricated design, but again, showing how you can just mix that in with some of the older features there. We have a lot of brick buildings in the area, plus the traditional semaphore signals too. So you really can mix classic and modern when you are looking at one of these diesel sheds. So we've covered a lot of the facilities we've got here. Let's look at some of the small parts that we've got on offer. A lot more yard lighting, as we mentioned on that picture of Bristol Bath Road. And we do have a lot of different styles of lights that you can have. This is from the Gagemaster range. But again, take a look at the description and you'll find lights suitable for you. These are very similar, especially on modern depots, to the lights you'd find in large car parks and industrial units. So these have a great multi-purpose value to them. You'll also see there's a lot of signage around, and this came in especially towards the 70s and the 80s with a lot more health and safety coming into it and a lot more locomotives moving around that were quite quieter than the steam locomotives that they replaced. So signage to make sure the crews are alert and aware of locomotives moving on the depot is absolutely essential. So have a look at these. These are the TMD accessory packs. Suitable for any of you modelling from the 1960s onwards. You get quite a few stop signs in there and different pallets of different parts of locomotives, including batteries and brake blocks. So ideal for you who've got a small depot like this where it is a minor maintenance shed. And I've put some of those down there just to show how they look up next to a shed such as this. If you are looking for something a little bit bigger, have a look at some of the really modern depots. I believe one of you's mentioned it in the chat already. I believe, there you go, Don has mentioned it. He's possibly having a look at modelling this, so I hope this picture inspires you. And this is a more heavy maintenance depot here that we have. So this carries out full repairs on the multiple units that we can see in the picture here. Again, quite a number of them are stabled outside, more so than you would find in the steam era. But additional facilities that you find here, we have a large crane, the big yellow crane that goes over, for be able to lifting the different facilities off the different trains off their wheels so they can carry out major repairs. Indeed, you can actually see a few selections of the different wheel sets towards the front of the depot. And one thing I really want to point out here is the different floor coverings too. You'll see that there are small areas of ballast, but most of the areas where items will need to be moved are concrete padding and cement paving, and you can pick them up from us in plastic sheets as part of the Wills range, or you can buy them in card from the Metcalfe range too. These are really easy to put down and cut to size to fit between your tracks. As you can see, going back to that image of Aylesbury Depot there, you can see that they go right up to the edge of the tracks and they provide a safe walking route and also a great route to move pallets of different rolling stock equipment on them too. So it really then gets into the smaller details, and I'll just show you a couple more photos of different styles of depot to give you some further inspiration. So this is a larger depot. This is a full major maintenance depot for East Midlands Railway. This is at Etches Park in Derby. And this is if you had quite a bit more space on your layout, you could recreate something like this. This whole train here, the 222 Meridian, is lifted off its wheels to carry out major maintenance to them. You can buy the locomotive lifting jacks here separately too, if you check that link in the description. And these will then be lifted off the units, as we can see here. So if you've got a major depot that would be carrying out major repairs, do have a look at something like that. But it isn't just layouts with sheds that you need. You can have layouts without sheds too. And here's a modern example of that. This is Blackpool North holding sidings, the stabling sidings for the multiple units. So no maintenance is actually carried out here. This is purely for keeping the units out of the way until they are needed on various different services running out of Blackpool in northwest England. Again, you'll see some of the facilities that we've mentioned there previously. You'll see the concrete padding there and some of the cleaner ballast. But one thing again to point out is the abundancy of fencing, not only the safety fencing towards the front, but also a lot of the palisade fencing that you do find towards the rear. So do have a bit of a look at some of these images. Again, I've put a small diorama here for you, but as we pointed out with the picture of Shrewsbury, you can have a smaller depot on your layout should you wish. You don't need a huge sprawling traction maintenance depot. But if you would like to do that, do take a look at some of the images we have again. Similar image here of Derby Etches Park and the Aylesbury multiple unit depot that you can see here. There's lots of different sizes. And if you fancy something really big, this is Salisbury Traction Maintenance Depot. So they carry out a heavy amount of duty in the shed on the left, but this also is combined with a stabling sidings on the right. So you've got the best of both here. You can either carry out heavy repairs on your engines, or you can carry out no repairs at all and just stable them there until they are needed for service. So as you can see, a huge amount of these items and those that we've seen on the photos today are available from us right now, either as really easy to put together plastic kits, as you can see from the Peco and Gagemaster ranges. Peco do a track weathering kit as well, although we did see that the track was quite clean. You would find that where locos are stabled for quite a long period of time, you may find some oil underneath those, so do have a look at the track weathering kits. It still would get dirty in some areas. Again, mentioning the concrete trunking and the concrete padding that you would find around a lot of the more modern depots. This would be found replacing the ballast on a lot of floors for a smoother way of getting vehicles, non-railway vehicles, shall we say, around those facilities. But if you want something small, if you want something large, we can have everything for you. Two items I've not mentioned are the ground signals, which came into play with more of the depots. We will be covering these in a future video, so stay tuned to our channel on the full operation of the ground signals. But these would make more of an appearance in depots. Again, with locomotives being quieter, these will give crews a lot more signal of the locomotives that we're moving. And again, just to mention the lights as well, a lot of the images we have here do have huge amounts of lights across the depot, even from right back in the 1970s, lighting up the depots so the crews could maintain these locomotives and get them into service at all hours of the day. So I hope I've given you a little bit of inspiration on how to get a depot onto your layout. You can either work large or small, and there's so much available in 00 gauge, whether you're modeling diesels right back in the late 1960s or up to the present day, with different options for stabling points, huge traction maintenance depots, or small little maintenance depots, as we can see here in front of us. Do take a look at the link in the description. There's far more than I can show on the show here today. There's huge amounts of different kits and options and detailing parts. One of you's mentioned the Accurascale buffer stops there, which indeed are a great addition to the layout that you can see here. So have a look at that link, find out more information there. And if you'd like to know anything else, please put a note in the comments or get in touch with our customer experience team, who will be more than happy to give you some advice. Otherwise, I'll give you one last look at some of those pictures. Do make sure to subscribe to our channel for more SkillsCast videos like this. Sign up to us on YouTube and Facebook for all the latest model railway news too. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.